Parents are facing a 28% nursery fee hikes next year. I'm going to read into this exclusive from iNews, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from the iNews with the headline that parents are facing a 28% nursery fee hikes next year. The exclusive reveals that the government outlines a £2 billion uplift to early years investment compared with last year, but providers warn this will not be enough. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share this across social media so others are notified of this video. So we have talked in the past about nursery fee hikes before, and I do think this is worth reminding people the situation around nurseries. One of the things that's happening more and more often these days now is that more parents are now are just leaving their kids with their grandparents, and as opposed to leaving them in nurseries or childcare at all, because of the costs. The costs for them are just extraordinary, and that unfortunately that's really sad because. And don't take this the wrong way. I really want to emphasize this, that while I totally understand that, spending time with their grandparents is obviously very important. It's very good, but what's also important is their education. And sometimes them being with other kids, even if they don't know those kids, can turn out to be could be very good for them, especially at a young age. Spending time with the same children. Especially if they have kids in their families that don't have, if they don't have like kids around the same age in their family trees as well. And I think that's really, really important. When I look at that and I think about that could be an opportunity. There's an opportunity of education there. Now I'm talking about people who are doing all right, but not enough to be able to pay for these fees. People who have got homes, mortgages, bills, and whatnot, got decent job, got enough decent job, decent families who are doing decent job and doing enough, but not enough to pay for these extraordinary fees. Right? I'm not even talking about those who are really struggling. Those who are really struggling to get by, those who don't have maybe family and friends that they can put their kids to. Those are the ones who are in big trouble because of these hikes, because they are not able to put these kids into nurseries, puts them in a situation where instead of them working, they're stuck at home looking after their child because they don't have somebody to look after their child. And these nurseries that they want to put them in costs just too much. Whereas they'd rather be working, earning their pay instead of being stuck at home looking after their child because it costs too much for them to be in nursery. And this needs to change. Something needs to change fundamentally here because it's a broken system. And, I hear a lot about the government's investing this and this and that, but a lot of it's also down to workers. We need workers in this sector as well. And that's something we're lacking as well. Used to have a lot of EU workers. What happened to them all, guys? So parents facing nursery fee increases next year as the government funding for childcare will be wiped out by tax rises and higher wages. Early year leaders have said that some nurseries will be forced to shut down as they describe the funding boost as inadequate. One nursery has warned that it will have to raise fees by 28%, a figure that could see the average fees for a child under two increases by $1,643 to $10,516 per year. That's just impossible. On average, parents face fee increases between 15 and 20%, the Early Years Alliance has said. The government on Tuesday outlined a $2 billion uplift to early years investment compared with 2023 to support the expansion of 30 hours of state-funded childcare from next September. They also raised funding rates to local authorities on an average of 4.1% for 3 and 4-year-olds, 3.3% for 2-year-olds, and 3.4% for children under 2. It is understood that the sector had pushed the government for an uplift in early years funding of around 15% for 9 months old and 2-year-olds, and a 40% increase for children aged 3 to 4. The Early Year Alliance, representing 14,000 members in England, warned that parents should expect average fee increases between 15 and 20%, as well as major shortfalls in nursery places as a result of the funding being smaller than they called for. One of the alliance's nurseries will have to raise fees by 28% just to break even, according to Chief Executive Neil Lynch. So, calculating the costs, what will parents say? So, the iPaper has analysed data from the Corden family and Childcare's comprehensive 2024 survey, which was published back in March, to determine how much fees might go up on average for a part-time nursery care. The part-time care was analysed as the majority of working parents receive at least 15 hours of government-funded childcare a week, and this applies to babies at the age of 9 months, with 30 funded hours available for children aged 3 or 4. A 28% increase for fees could mean that the average cost of a part-time 25 hours a week nursery place for children under 2 would increase by $1,643 to $10,516 per year. Parents are facing an average of $8,216 a year, or £158 per week for a part-time place. That's just not possible. 150, just for some people, it's just not possible. According to the charity, bills have already climbed up 7% in the past year. In London, parents pay £218 a week for one part-time place, or $11,336 per year. 28% rise, with fees reaching $14,510 per year in the capital, a jump of $2,267. In September next year, government-funded childcare is being expanded so the parents can get 30 funded hours for all children under 5. Eligibility for funding support depends on whether parents work, their income, their child age and circumstances, and their immigration status. Parents cannot access government-funded childcare if one person in the household individually earns £100,000 or more. The consequences of inadequate funding will mean more closures, higher or increases in charges for extra, and higher fees for parents who do not qualify for the entitlements, he said. Providers have warned they face a shortfall of funds due to the increases in employers' national insurance contributions and minimum wage outlined by Rachel Reeves in October's budget. National insurance payments for employers will jump from 13.8% to 15% in April, and the secondary earnings threshold at level at which employers start making NICs will be reduced from 9,100 to 5,000. The Department of Education told the National Day Nursery Association for the funding factored for minimum wage increase, inflation and average earning growth, but not increase NICs. The Treasury will reimburse schools and maintain nurseries for NICs, but this will not include private or voluntary providers, which deliver about 3/4 of funding childcare places. So 3/4 are being delivered by private and voluntary providers. So just quickly here, who gets child-funded childcare? So parents of children aged 9 months or 2 years can currently claim 15 hours of government-funded childcare a week. This will be expanded to 30 hours in September. Parents of children aged 3 to 4 are already entitled to 33 hours. Lynch said the overwhelming majority of providers are putting prices up for hours that fall outside the government's program, which will affect parents who need more than 30 hours a week of childcare, as well as those who are not eligible for 3 hours. But he warned that this will not be enough to offset costs of the NIC increase, and is expected to force some nurseries, especially those in deprived areas which are more reliant on government funding, to close. The National Day Nursery Association welcomed the government had announced a 45% increase in the early years pupil premium at a cost of $25 million, a target to most disadvantaged children in the childcare desert, but warned that it will still be well below the primary school pupil premium. The DFE also announced a £75 million expansion grant to help nurseries, childminders and other early year providers deliver 70,000 places and 35 additional staff needed for next September, which will be allocated later in 2024. After Keir Starmer's 6 milestones announced in his plans for change last week, is to increase the proportion of 5-year-olds of children who are judged to be educationally and socially ready to start school to a record proportion of 75% by 2028. National Day Nursery Association raised concerns about the lack of detail of how the 75 million would be allocated. Yeah, this is one of the things that you hear a lot when it comes to these budgets. When it came to the budget of all these announcements of how money would be distributed, you weren't told about how these money will be distributed. You were told like record investment here, here, and here, right? You heard this a lot from the Tories, You never knew about how it would be distributed. The association chief executive, Pramila Thakur, said the new funding rates showed the Treasury does not appreciate the contribution of the private and voluntary early years sector. She said the national insurance contribution increase is going to cripple providers, and the only way that they can cover these costs is by increasing parental fees. Ms. Tatu warned that the funding shortages will be the last straw for some nurseries, who will result in more setting closing rather than expanding to meet expected demand, urging the government to exempt all private and voluntary early years providers from paying the increased NICs. In a statement announcing the funding boost, the Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said, "Higher quality early education is a cornerstone of our promise to ensure tens of thousands of children are school ready this year as part of the government's plan for change. Despite the inheritors we face, this government will invest in our children's future and break down the link between battlegrounds and success and build a system that gives every child the best start in life," completely ignoring what we've just read. The early years have been a priority from day one, but because by giving more children the chance to start school ready to go, we transform their life chances and give their life chances and life chances in every child in their classroom. A government spokesperson previously said, "We take the concerns of the sector seriously and continue to work with them and across government to ensure that funding arrangements are given as much certainty and confidence as possible to deliver on their promises made to parents." It just feels like, that given what Bridget Phillipson is saying there, and then you hear what Miss Taku is saying here, the private sector really, I really can't stress this enough, guys. The private sector really needs help in this. They're being hung out to dry here. The private sector really is important here. Like it said in there, three quarters is being used. And like I said at the start of the video, not everyone can afford it. And they can't just keep increasing it. Those who are really wealthy and well off, they can afford it. But not everyone can afford it. Some people may have to ditch it as a direct result of this. Some people may not be able to afford the childcare, and it may come to a situation where some childcare places are just going to shut up shop because they just can't pay for this. Bills are already struggling enough for people. But you have to remember, there's so much cost into running a nursery. All the accessories and everything. It's all paid out of the especially for private companies. It's all paid out of the companies. Food, clothing, nappies, all that stuff. The toys, all that kind of stuff, guys. They really have to count their pennies, and they are already counting every single penny when it comes to this, in order for them to run. And they don't want to charge parents more than they have to, but they're being forced to. And I'm hearing the government saying, "Oh, we're gonna, give children futures and whatnot." It just feels like they're just trudging along and completely ignoring the crisis that's facing them on this. Sounds familiar about a lot of sectors, doesn't it? So what do you guys think? What do you guys make of the situation around nurseries? What do you guys make of the situation around private nurseries specifically? Let me know your thoughts about all this and more down in the comment section below. If you found this video informative, please hit the like button. We'd greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing, because it really does help support the channel. If you want to go one step further and financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or you can join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.